Next, we have Cohn, the voice of Pharah. Woo. There we go.
Hi.
All right. Next, we have Elise Zhang, the voice of May. Next, we have Parson, the voice of Junkrat.
Oh, he gets smoked.
You guys smoked too. And last but not least, we have Hollings with voice of Widowmaker. Awesome, awesome. So we're gonna have about 20 minutes of questions and 20 to 30 minutes of questions, and then 30 minutes of questions from you guys, the fans. So let's go ahead and jump in. Let's start talking about everybody's journey to get into the Overwatch voice booth there.
Okay.
You want to?
Hi, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me. It's sort of noisy in this room, but scream at me if you can't. I had an interesting start as Winston. I probably was one of the earliest people to work on the project because the first thing I believe they pulled us in to do as voice actors was the original cinematic trailer, which is the first thing that Blizzard officially released. And so when I auditioned for Winston and came in, I would ask them all sorts of questions about the game, and a lot of times their answer was, we're not sure yet, because they were still sort of in development. They were still sort of figuring it out. And that was one of the cool things about the process, was that we would sort of feed off of each other. They would sort of suggest something, and I'd try it, and that would give them an idea, which would give me an idea, which would give them an idea. And so we'd sort of bounce off of each other until we found a sort of center for Winston. And back then, we were working under a code name, so I didn't even know what the game was called. And so I didn't even know when it was going to be released, and it was one of the BlizzCons for Warlords of Draenor, because I also played the voice of Vindicator Maraud in World of Warcraft. And I was there promoting World of Warcraft, and I'm backstage, and on this little screen, which showed what was happening on the big screen, this film started playing, and it looked like a Pixar film. You know, it was all bright and shiny, and Blizzard stuff tends to be sort of dark and serious. And so here was this bright, shiny film, and I'm like, wow, that's interesting, what's that? And then this gorilla comes on the screen, and I'm like, oh, it's a gorilla. Wait, I play a gorilla. Wait, what is this? Overclock, overdrive? What? I don't know what this is. What's this called? And so it was sort of, when I saw that trailer, that's when it really sort of crystallized for me. I was like, oh, that's the world we're in now. And we were sort of off to the races from there.
I love that answer. That was so good. So wait, was the question about my start with this game?
Yes.
So I had done voices for World of Warcraft, and one day my agent called me that I had an audition for a game that was then codenamed Prometheus, and Pharah did not have Farah's name, she had a different name. And the description of the character, which is she was very aggressive and she was very macho and she was a shooter and all this, I thought she was a villain. So I did this very dastardly, villainous audition for Pharah and sent it in. And as is customary when you're a voice actor, you immediately forget about your audition as soon as you've done it because you don't like hang on to it. So I sent it in, I never thought about it again, gone. 6 months later, I get a call from my agents that I have a session for a game called Overwatch for a character named Pharah, and that the session is on my birthday. And so I was like, nice, my birthday. But I said, but wait, I never auditioned for Overwatch. I never auditioned for Pharah. They made a mistake. There must be another Cohn who's a voice actor in Los Angeles, and they've mixed us up because I didn't audition for this. And she assured me it was me. But I went into the session, and the first thing I said, as soon as I had my headphones on and was talking to Jeff Kaplan and Michael Chu and Andrea Toyas, was, guys, you got the wrong Cohn. It's not me. I didn't audition for this. And they all started laughing and said, no, 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 it's you. And they played me villain Pharah. And I went, oh, it's that. Oh, I remember this. Okay. And then they explained to me that Pharah was the Captain America of the game. And that was the direction we should go. And that was on my birthday almost 4 years ago. And that was the session where we found Pharah's voice.
About 3 years ago, I was asked. Okay, like this. Okay. About 3 or 4, I don't remember, years ago, I was asked to be in the audition. I know that's a project about a Blizzard, a new game, a shooting game, and they want me to speak English. They want the Chinese accent, but speak English. I mean, I was like, why me? They say, oh, you have a master's degree. You must know how to speak English. So that was why I was in that audition. Okay. They told me that she was a scientist, and I studied chemical technology in college. So maybe that's why. The second reason, maybe. And she was kind of cute and shy, and she is from China, from Xi'an, so she has the Chinese accent. So they think that's perfect for me, but I'm not that confident. In that audition, they asked me to read a paragraph of in English, and those sentences are quite simple for me, so I passed that audition. And after 1 month or 2 months, there was a call back, and after that, I was told that I am that character. So that's really amazing. I know that will be a big thing. I mean, Blizzard game and Chinese character, and I'm the English version, so wow, that's so big. I think I'm really lucky. They built a character that is so similar to me, so I don't need to change my voice a lot. I don't need to push myself that much. It's just to speak English in Chinese accent. But you know, that's kind of difficult for me. Thank you, Blizzard. Yeah, that's how. Thank you.
For me, it was a breakdown. They just put out a breakdown saying, well, we're looking for this like underweight Australian who's like a crystal meth addict, or may or may not be a crystal meth addict. I'll just rephrase that. Let's paint Blizzard in a more positive light. So I lived in Australia, but as for the other characteristics, you know, I couldn't relate to them, but I felt connected to them, you know, in terms of a guy that loses his cool and explodes and the whole thing. And I mean, I had done some voices for Blizzard before in a few of the World of Warcraft entries. So as far as I know, it was just one read, and then I was there, and oh, you're doing this game, and I thought, oh, okay. I thought at the time it was just going to be another game, but you know, clearly I was right.
So the lucky thing for me was that I live in Paris, in France. I'm a voice actor over there, but the industry in Paris, France, is very different than it may be in LA. So basically, Blizzard is an unknown thing. I mean, I knew of games that were made by Blizzard, but I mean, I never auditioned for them. It was something that I could really reach out for. So it wasn't even like a dream. It wasn't like on my wish list. It was practically non-existent. And when I got to audition, I didn't even realize how big a phenomenon this game was going to be. The only reason I auditioned was because Blizzard had started to, well, I mean, they were probably pretty close to the opening of the game, and they had sent what they had the beta version and probably the 2 first shorts to a dubbing studio in Paris. And they were supposed to get the whole game and every character dubbed into French. And when they listened to Widowmaker, who is French, they realized that the actress who had been chosen in LA was, I believe she's very, very good. I have heard her. But there was just this little tiny thing where they thought, this girl isn't really French, and maybe we can find a real French person over here. So they suggested that to Blizzard. And so suddenly this tiny little dubbing studio in Paris is like, oh, we can work for Blizzard now, and we get to show them what we can do. So they put a lot of care into like finding bilingual actresses, and because I speak both languages, I just got to do that audition. The first thing I auditioned for was the cinematic, the live film, and I don't know, I think I was just very relaxed, much more than I would have been if I had actually known what was about to happen. So yeah, I guess that was it.
Wow, that's, yeah. So with all of that, after about like 2 years, what's the moment that made you realize Overwatch was a lot bigger than you thought this would be? Yeah.
I think for me, I realized how big it was the first time I went to a convention, and like over half the things I was signing was Overwatch. Right? Because I've been working as a voice actor now for basically 20 years. And I have plenty of anime and other game credits, and people will come up, and there's certain things that I'm known for, that people like me for, and that's great. But when Winston sort of crowded out every other character when I was signing autographs, I was like, oh, I think people like this game. I think this is a thing now.
Wow.
There were a series of things, but the notable things were I kept on, so I also do fashion consulting and branding and style trend scouting, and so I operate under the name Fashion Dilettante under that. And I started getting all these requests about Pharah through Fashion Dilettante. And I was like, wait, what is going on? Hold on, because this has never happened before. And then suddenly my agent gets a letter from someone in England who wants a signed poster for their daughter. And I had no idea there was a poster to sign. I knew nothing. And then suddenly somebody wanted a Funko Pop, and I'm like, wait, Pharah has a Funko Pop? Like, I had no idea. And the biggest one was BlizzCon, because I showed up at BlizzCon totally unprepared, completely unprepared, and my brain just exploded. Like, I did not realize what had happened, what had evolved. You know, I've done other games, and big games, and the miracle of what's happened with this game and with this voice cast has never happened to me before. So it's been just very exciting.
Wow.
Okay, I've done Hearth of Stone, Heroes of Storm, and the World of Warcraft, is that right? I've done these games in Chinese version in China before, so I know Blizzard is a big thing in China. So, and I'm in the English version, I'm the Chinese hero, so I knew that will be a big thing, but it was not supposed to be so big. After the game is released, I've got more and more followers on the social media, and I was invited to cons in China, and then I was invited to BlizzCon. Yeah, the same to Jen. That was so big, too big for me. Thank you.
I think the first time I noticed that the game might have some impact was more and more as I'm at the airport. I'm noticing 13 or 14-year-old kids with phones looking at their phones, then looking at me, then looking at their phones, and looking at me. And it's like, yeah, I think that's around the time when I realized that things are changing slightly.
Yeah, my answer is going to be very close to Jen's answer, actually. I was on Twitter for a while, and I was battling with like 23 followers who would become 25 followers, and then there's this stage at the beginning when suddenly you lose 3 followers and you're like, why? And I didn't get this Twitter thing. And at some point I was just like getting followers and people telling me that they loved me and I had never met them before, and I was like, what is happening? So that was step number 1, and then step number 2 was obviously BlizzCon. That's when I was like afraid, but happy afraid.
To add on to what Chris said, I had a Thanksgiving before I was invited to BlizzCon, where I suddenly, like all the 13-year-old, the bar mitzvah boys in the room, all like started whispering and huddling up, and then just kind of sidling up to me and being like, "You're not really Pharah. You're not really Pharah." And then they made me take pictures, and then they made me do lines for them, and their parents were all completely freaking out and saying, "What is going on, Jen?" So that was a good one too.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. So in each of your opinions, what is the most underappreciated aspect of Overwatch that you wish was appreciated more?
Is there anything that's underappreciated about Overwatch? I feel like the enthusiasm for the game is sort of overwhelming.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Payload.
Well, I would say if it's just that what I can see from this side of where we are is how much the voice actors are like in the light. I'd say I always try to remind people how we would be nothing if there wasn't this huge, immense team of people who do an extraordinary job on every aspect of the game. I guess that's what we talk the less about, and we would be nothing without them. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't agree more.
Me too.
Yeah, we as actors tend to be sort of the front line. It's usually how you relate to the character based on how it's drawn visually and how they sound. And while it's hard to, the visual design and movement of the character is done by a team. And so it's hard to sort of pinpoint. It's easy. We all become a flag for the character, right? We're sort of the standard bearer of the character, so it's easier to relate to us directly. But we are just sort of the tip of the spear. There's this whole team behind us that makes this. And as much as I love Winston wouldn't work if the whole world of Overwatch didn't exist. And I didn't make that, right? There's like a whole crew of people at Blizzard who made that, and I'm so grateful to them for having made that.
Yeah, well said. The other person that I want to mention is our casting director and voice director, Andrea Toyas, who cast us all. Who really is a visionary and really knows, like, has a real sense of character. I mean, there are a lot of very good voice actors, and considering that they look for people all over the world for each of these characters, but she is able to sort of laser focus and pinpoint and found each person to play each character, and I think that the job she did was extraordinary. So, her too.
Amazing.
I want to talk about the animators. When I was, first time I was doing the animated thing in America, and all I saw is a storyboard, the pictures that they don't move. And I know, the first time I see the cinematic, it was like, whoa, all these motions, all this, the face, the expression, everything. It is so magic. And I know that they will do days, they will work on that for days for just one motion, maybe like this, and that will take them like days of work. So I really love them.
Yeah, just to add to what Crispin said, I mean, if there's one, if the people that are underappreciated in this one it's the technical people, all the people that do all of the, well, I was going to say all of the effects, but it's all an effect because it's all a video game. You know, I used to work in digital effects, albeit briefly, before I got started in voiceover, and I would look through spreadsheets of like, you know, on movies of who was who and what was what, and it's just, I mean, it's a phone book of people that it takes to create everything. So yeah, just to add to what Crispin said, it's really the technical people that really make us, I think, shine in the end.
Okay. All right, I think it is just about time for fan questions now. So,
Oh, good. We get to ask them questions?
Hey!
We have our 2 runners. Raise your hands, runners. There we go. Spotlights on them. If you will, go ahead and line up behind the mic. And as a request, let's keep it PG. It's not, yeah, it's kids here. Okay.
Make sure to speak loudly and clearly because it is noisy in here and it can be challenging for us to hear.
Hi.
Okay.
Do any of y'all play the game, and if so, what character do you like to play in the game?
So I have played. I cannot say that I play like on a daily basis, but I have played, and actually I played with Keith Silverstein, who was doing Junkrat and trying to teach me. But I don't know if he failed or if I failed, but it went terribly wrong. He was jumping on my head more so than anything else, so.
If you know the actor Ray Chase, he's one of my castmates in Final Fantasy 15. And we were at something, and he said, "Chris, why don't you play Overwatch? You've never played it before." So I played, and in about 5 or 6 seconds, I was like, I suck at this so bad. So I just gently handed him the controller and said, "I'm just gonna stick to doing the voices. I'll let the Overwatch masters out here Overwatch their way into Overwatchness. And I'll just stick to the recording studio."
At first I played as Mei in Overwatch, but I keep dying, and all my teammates are trying to save me all the time. Nobody was around a payload. Nobody was around the payload. Everybody is trying to save me. And then I play Junkrat because I don't come too close to the enemies. I can stay really far and just throw, explode. But Junkrat really, he can die really easily. You know, with no protection, die really easily.
No freezing, no.
Yeah, it just pew and dead. That is Junkrat, and I like to do Junkrat voice lines while I'm playing Overwatch, but I can't do that now. Yeah, we are not allowed to do that, right? Yeah, I think so.
I am hand-eye coordination challenged. I am a bad driver. I am bad. So I have tried to play twice as Pharah, and it was a absolutely dismal failure. I am a really bad Overwatch player. Really bad.
I'm sure I'm worse.
So some of you may be familiar with the fact that Matthew Mercer and I decided to get on Twitch and play Overwatch together, where he would play as McCree and I would play as Winston. Now, I have played games in the past. I'm not that big of a gamer, but we had to play as our characters because that was the joke. We were going to do the voices of the characters on the voice chat while we were playing. Little problem. Winston is a disruptive tank, which means that you have to have 2 things down pat. You have to be able to control his motion very well. You have to have the sort of keyboard coordination, which I don't have because I'm rusty. It's been a while since I've played AWSD games. And secondly, you have to know the map, so you know where you're jumping into and where you're jumping out of. I don't know these maps yet, so I'm getting my butt handed to me in this game because I'm clueless. Meanwhile, Matt's like at a distance going, "High noon." I'm like, "Screw you, dude. Screw you." And then at one point, he switched to Pharah, and I was like, that's cheating. You gotta stick with McCree, buddy boy. And so we stayed and we played. My computer was so old, I'm a Macintosh guy, so I didn't have a PC to play it on. But I finally got a new computer. I got like an iMac Pro, and so I have to build a Windows Boot Camp partition on it so I can actually play Overwatch. So hopefully, in the next few months, I'll actually start playing Overwatch for real.
Thank you.
All right, can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right, good. Okay, so hey, I just want to ask something to Chris Parson over there.
Yeah.
So Chris, what are the 2 things that solve every problem?
So,
The 2 things that solve every problem: Junkrat and Gladio.
I was looking
Thank
for
you.
money and explosives, but that's a good answer too.
Thank you.
question off the.
Well, what got you guys into voice acting? Why did you guys decide to do that?
Because
Well-
it's the most fun.
I actually have an entire podcast about that where I talk about in great gory detail how I broke into the industry and why I'm into it. It's called Voice Acting Mastery. It's at voiceactingmastery.com, and you can look it up in the iTunes store, and you can go to crispinfreeman.com, and there's a link that says go to Voice Acting Mastery. But basically, I had a passion for animation, and I wanted to be involved. Specifically, I had a passion for Japanese animation, and my passion for that and wanted to contribute to that art form meant that I was going to be a voice actor because I can't draw. So I wasn't going to be an animator, and so my way to contribute to the artwork was as a voice actor, and then that sort of snowballed into games and American animation and everything else.
I started as a stage and film actress, and because I have never in my life been an ingenue, I always had character roles. And so when I started out and was doing terrible off Broadway theater.
I've worked there.
Yeah, you were there. Yeah, I saw you there. I know. I kept on getting stopped by producers telling me that my voice was great. Did I want to do voiceovers? And in fact, a company that's here in Atlanta was my first ad campaign, Rooms to Go. I was the voice of Rooms to Go. That was like one of my first gigs, but it's so funny. But yeah, so I liked it, and it was great, and it was fun, and it didn't matter if I was schnozzy or if I needed to lose 5 pounds or if I was dark. Like, it was a fun, cool thing to pursue, and I got a terrible agent, and then a less terrible agent, and then an okay agent, then a good one, then a great one, and then my career took off. So it was good.
As I mentioned, I studied chemical technology in college, and I'm really bad at doing experiments. So it's kind of dangerous for me to stay in the lab. And I like voice acting from when I was really young, like 12 or 13 years old, like that. So I think it would be much safer and funnier to be a voice actor than scientist, yeah. So I took a training course in voice acting, and I know my mentor, she thought maybe I have some potential, so she gave me a lot of opportunities. I got a lot of roles that I like, and that's how I decided to be a voice actor. Thank you.
Well, after I graduated from film school, I kicked around for a few years and nothing really seemed to work out. And as I mentioned before, I was working at a digital effects company, and one day the axe just fell and I was out of work. So I was collecting unemployment for the next 8 or 9 months. And one day I looked on Craigslist and there was somebody who said, do you do celebrity impressions? I said, a little bit. And I went, I flew back. I was hanging out in Houston, and I flew back to Los Angeles and met with this guy, and it turned out to be like a little hole-in-the-wall agency, kind of like one of your starter talent agency kind of thing. But I started booking little things here and there, and it's snowballed. I mean, there's a lot of little details I'm leaving out, but there you go. There's the Cliff's Notes version.
I started as a child. I was, because I spoke English as a kid in a French country, well, I mean in a French-speaking country, sorry. I was doing English learning methods. And so that required me to learn how to do all these different voices and everything. And I was just doing it as a hobby in a way, just a thing that I like to do. I was earning a little money. It was fun. It was great. I liked it. When I decided to become an actor and do like on stage and on camera work, it seemed very natural to continue. And then little by little, I just explored more and more of that. I will say that what I do like about voice work is that what I did like was that I got to do everything that was expected of me on stage or on camera, but no one could see me. So I found it very liberating, and still do. It can be very physical. You are not, like, the way you look and what you are is not an obstacle. So you can go, like, be a child, you can be a monster, you can be an animal, you can be whatever, and I really, really like that. Hello.
I wanted to know, who in the voice acting community inspired you as a voice actor?
Is the question who inspired you as a voice actor?
Crispin Freeman.
Oh, me specifically?
No.
For
everyone.
I have to say that I was never a person who followed voice actors. That wasn't a thing for me. What I followed was stories and characters. So it was much more that I would find myself attached to certain animated shows and be fascinated with the character. And it wasn't until after I became a professional voice actor that I even bothered to look up who they were. But for instance, one of the animated shows that really was a part of my childhood was the Rankin Bass animated version of The Hobbit. And when you watch that, there's some really great voices in that. One of them that stands out to me is Brother Theodore playing Gollum. I mean, Andy Serkis is a fabulous Gollum in the live action films, but Brother Theodore's Gollum in the animated film is terrifying. There is a manic viciousness to him that gave me nightmares as a child, and for some reason I love that. I don't know what that was about, right? So what I do is I go back and I look at those people and I say, isn't that amazing? Now that I'm a professional, I can look at my fellow colleagues or colleagues that came before me and admire them. You know, I can admire Frank Welker, or I can admire June Foray and these people who do these amazing voices, but that wasn't something that I didn't say, oh my God, I want to be Mel Blanc, right? That was never, because there are voice actors like that. There are friends of mine who are like that. That was not my thing. My thing was, I want to work on these stories. Oh, that person did that, and they did that too, and they did that too? Wow, they're really good. I need to get as good as them. But it wasn't like I was following a voice actor I admired, and that was what was inspiring me. It was always the stories and the characters first.
That was such a good answer. Wow. The one that I always knew about growing up was Mel Blanc. Mel Blanc was so extraordinary. He voiced everything. He voiced every voice of everything I watched on Saturday mornings. It was crazy. So he was the person I had the most awareness of, and the idea that it was a job to do all of these crazy voices, and I did all these crazy voices when I was playing with my friends or by myself. So I loved that idea. And then when I got older, when I saw Trey Parker and Matt Stone start South Park, the idea that you could create your own universe that was really subversive and funny and do all these voices, I found that really inspiring, and such a specific world, so I loved that.
Okay. I was inspired by a Chinese voice actor. Her name is Su Bai Li, and she turned out to be my mentor when I was in the training course, so I love that. I'm really lucky. Thank you.
My answer is a pretty stock one, but it's the truth. I always loved Mel Blanc growing up as a little itty-bitty kid, you know, and waking up to the Saturday morning cartoons, and his voice was all over it. I wouldn't say that he was what inspired me, but it's kind of hard not to be inspired in some way by the guy, if that makes any sense. He was a big shadow.
Weirdly enough, I mean, I think I was so young when I started doing voice acting that I never really And because I was in France, and a lot of the voice work that you hear over there is dubbing, which is very, very different. I never really, there was never a part of me that was like, oh, I want to be that voice actor or anything. I guess I always considered, I liked the movies, the animated movies. I liked every Disney and every Pixar, and I still do. And so I think I was much more fascinated by that process. And yeah, that was just a way that I could combine my passion for characters and human beings and acting with these things these films that I adored.
Thank you.
Hello. I just wanted to ask, half of you don't live in LA, obviously. When Blizzard calls you in to do the voice lines for your characters, do you actually have to go to LA, or do you record it on your own time with your own microphones or in a studio local to you?
I live in New York, and I go to a studio that's local to me that actually is very close. It's 10 blocks from my house, which is great. That's where I most of the time record. However, when I've been in LA at a time when it happens to work out scheduling-wise, I've recorded at a studio in LA. And I even once was in Paris, and Chloe turned me onto her Paris studio when I had to go do a session. So what's great is you can record it from anywhere if they have a good studio, which is most places in the world now.
Yeah, I do that in China, but only once in LA. That was when I was at BlizzCon. Yeah.
But I think the question you're asking is, can you do it from home? And the answer is no. You can't really do it from home, because the challenge is they want to make sure that all of us sound the same, so on the same equipment. And everyone's home studio sounds radically different. So even if we all had the exact same microphone, the booths that we have at home are going to be shaped differently, and they might have different sonic characteristics. When you're going to a professional studio, there's sort of a minimum quality level that these studios need to have. And so these engineers can talk to each other and make sure that they're getting the exact right sound quality that they want. That's very hard to do in a home studio unless you've invested a lot of money in that home studio, and then you probably want to make money off that home studio, and now you're a professional studio, so congratulations, you know. So it's not the kind of thing you can do from your home studio.
Although, if there are jobs that are not animation, like promo jobs, like you get called to be the voice of like American Airlines or something like that, that they would make you set up a studio in your home, because they'd be calling you, you know, every day or every other day, and you'd have to have an ISDN box or Source Connect or something. It'd be pretty involved.
Yeah, I make a distinction on the podcast between what I call narrative voiceover and character voiceover. Narrative voiceover is the kind of voiceover that happens in a commercial or a promo or a trailer where it's just your voice, and it's not a bunch of people's voices. Character voiceover is when you have a cast of characters in an animated show or a game. When you've got a cast, you want to make sure all those cast members sound consistent. But if it's narrative, if you're doing promos or commercials, that is possible to do from a home studio, because no one's going to be comparing your recording to somebody else's recording. That's true.
Thank you very much.
No problem. Sure.
Good question.
Okay, so I just wanted to say, one, I'm a huge fan of Junkrat.
Thank you.
And one of my best friends is a huge fan of May. I might have heard this from a couple of you guys already, but out of all of the experiences that you've had with your fans, what's one or two of your most favorite moments interacting with fans?
Okay, so the question is, what's your favorite moment interacting with the fans?
Yes.
Okay.
My favorite moment interacting with fans is when they come to me and they say, hey, I just booked some work.
Yes.
That's my favorite. When I have a fan who has either listened to my podcast or taken class with me and come back and say, hey, what you taught me, whether it be about voice acting or my mythology scholarship, right? That helped me book this job, or it helped me write this screenplay, or it helped me improve this aspect of my life. That's the most satisfying, because then I feel like I've given that person something useful that has improved their existence.
Chloe and I were talking about this yesterday because we were asked a similar question. At BlizzCon last year, a young man came backstage to meet us who came through the Make-A-Wish Foundation. And that was a really moving, extraordinary, inspiring moment. That was real. It was very meaningful for all of us. And we got to meet his parents. And he was just a major fan, and this was his wish, was to come and meet us and talk to us. That was a really emotional few hours, a couple of hours. And similar to what Crispin said, when fans come up and tell me that they follow me on social media and that I have somehow inspired them to be more themselves, or to embrace their eccentricities, or to follow the path that they want to be on, that means the world to me. So that's my favorite kind of fan interaction.
Okay, I like it when little girls, little boys come up to me and give me maybe a letter wrote by them, or a picture drew by them. Really little kids, like 10 years old or that. That is really cute. And sometimes some of my American fans, who is definitely born and raised in America, they come up to me and they say, 谢谢. Oh, that's cute.
Mainly for me, what I'm moved by are a lot of the, I know they said that, but a lot of the pictures and sketches and things that I'm given and notes that I'm given. It's really moving to me. And I mean, there's already been so many of those, I can't even count them anymore. So like, I feel pretty lucky. Aside from the Overwatch stuff, I mean, that's one of those great things that when people tell you what it means to them. Because you can't see it when you're a working actor. You're just worried about your bills, and you're worried about, being in the good graces of your agency, and you're worried about that stuff. So when people send you letters or send you pictures that they've drawn, that it does get to you.
Yeah, I think basically, as most of us have been saying, it's very, very humbling and gratifying when you realize that your work as an actor has allowed other people to discover something of themselves and some of their own strength. So here we are playing heroes, and then other people discover that they can be a hero as well. I'm always very, very moved and impressed when people, some of you might know this, I wrote a book that came out in French, a couple of years ago. It's a body positive memoir, and every time someone who doesn't speak French actually buys the book, reads it, gets it, translates it themselves, or listen to all the interviews that I've done about it and come to me and say, oh my God, I relate to this. And somehow Overwatch brings us all to these different places, like fashion or like body positive or whatever. And I think that's very, very fortunate. I feel like we're very lucky that we can kind of, we have this megaphone. Yeah, so that would be my response.
Awesome.
Hi there. My question is for Crispin. When doing autographs at conventions like this, how often do you have to sign jars of peanut butter?
How often do I have to sign what?
Jars of peanut butter.
Jars of peanut butter. I haven't had one yet this convention, but usually there's one or two.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You bet.
Wow. Question here.
Okay, so Overwatch is, despite coming out in 2016, it's still an ongoing thing because we have all the special events for Overwatch, so there's always new voice lines. So I was wondering, how often do you guys go and record?
So the question is, how often do you record?
Yes.
Okay.
I think it depends on what's going on. Like, for instance, it might be a while. It might be months and months before I come back to do Winston again, depending on the level. And then they're doing the Horizon Lunar Colony level. And then I've got a lot to do because I'm going to narrate the whole story about the Horizon Lunar Colony. And then I'm gone. And now there's the new thing where they're doing the sort of flashback to the Gabriel Reyes with McCree and the Black Ops crew. So I'm sure they were in recording that, and Winston wasn't a part of that. So they're probably recording, and I'm completely unaware of it.
That depends. I mean, sometimes I got to do sessions for May in English, and a couple of days later, May in Chinese, and a couple of days later, Samantha in Chinese. And sometimes I waited for months and no updates for May and Samantha. So yeah, that depends.
Yeah, I think it's different if you do it in multiple languages. I mean, Elise and Chloe both they do English and Chinese and French, and in your case multiple characters. So, but I think for those of us who speak English only or only do the English version, generally every 2 to 6 months you go in. It could be 2 months, it could be 6 months, but it's somewhere in there.
We're like mercenaries, basically. We sit around and we wait for a mission, and we don't know when that mission's going to come. We have to be ready. Something like that.
Thank you.
All right.
You're welcome.
So, I was wondering, what's the hardest part of being a voice actor? Like, what's the most challenging part? Like, I don't know.
I think for me, what's becoming challenging about voice acting is the changes that technology is bringing. So before the internet and home recording setups, there was a lot more time to audition for things. And you often had to go into the studio to work with the people who were working on the project, which meant that you got feedback. You might do an audition, and the director of the project might say, "Ooh, that's good, but could you do it this way?" And you go, "Oh yeah, sure." So there was this sort of communication that would happen. Now what's happened is everyone expects you to have a recording booth at home, and they expect you to record it really quickly. I thought it was bad when I would get auditions from my agent at like 6 o'clock at night, right before their office closed, and they wanted it back 9:30 in the morning. I thought that was a fast turnaround. And now they want it in a couple of hours. And I get no communication with the person I'm auditioning for. So I might do something, and they hear it, and they go, "No, that's not it." And I'm like, "Yeah, but you don't, I could do something else, but I don't have enough information." So there's more and more distance. Technology is putting more and more distance between me and my collaborators, and it's requiring me to do it faster and faster. So it hurts the artistry. Like, it makes it more and more difficult for things to be done on a higher level, and it's frustrating. But people seem to be willing to give that up for convenience, right? "Oh, we can get this audition back in a couple of hours. Well, won't that be great?" No, actually it won't, because anyone that's sitting on their hands and has the time to get you an audition back in a couple of hours isn't working. So you're not getting the best people, you know? So I think much of my frustration is technologically based at this point.
Crispin is so articulate and well-spoken. Yes, I would agree. The technological changes, it's changed the whole playing field, and it's ever evolving at this point. So casting directors are getting knocked out of the equation. Oftentimes agents get knocked out of the equation. I'll get direct requests from producers for sessions and for auditions. So it feels a little bit like the Wild West right now. So that's challenging, and it feels a little destabilizing. You know, we all entered a field where, you know, it's not like we punch in the clock and get our 40 hours and have our 401ks or anything like that. It's an unusual field, and when you're working consistently, you know you'll make a living. Yet when things are shifting underfoot so much, it can be a little bit nerve-wracking.
Okay. I think the hardest thing is when you're being a voiceover actor is keeping your head up when things are not working out and you're delivering what you think are really good auditions and just let's say month after month after month, you're not booking anything. That's hard to kind of keep your wits and your sanity. So yeah, and those are things that, like, how do you teach them? How do you teach somebody to be cool when like you're not booking stuff and haven't booked for a month or 2 months or 3, and that's an eternity in what we do. So that's, I think, the hardest part.
And that happens to everyone. Everyone goes
everybody
through
goes
phases
through
where that happens.
Absolutely.
True.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree with all of these answers, I must say. Another thing that's kind of challenging is that at the end of the day, you may be as talented as you are and everything, but we still depend on our physical body and on a very fragile organ, which is our vocal cords, and you can never really predict, depending on how tired you are or how much stress you're going through or what's happening in your life or what you did yesterday and what you're preparing for, like just what your voice is going, like how precise, how articulate, how everything. So you just have to like maintain yourself, I guess.
All right, so we have 5 minutes left. There's a lot of questions back there, so we're gonna try to do a lightning round. If you can keep your questions quick, concise, to the point, we can help everybody out. All right, go.
First, I want to say thank you all for being here. I was lucky enough to catch Crispin's panel yesterday, so I already know his answer to this question. The question is, what is a condensed approach to how you relate to the characters you're voicing? His answer was find what they're fascinated with and what they are hurt by.
Ask the question one more time.
What is a condensed version of how you approach relating to the character you're voicing?
I figure out, what does she want? How does she stand? What is her posture? How does she breathe? Where does she form her words in her mouth? And how does she move? Those are the questions.
The same with Jen. Sorry.
I like to think about the way the character looks, which is why, if I get a breakdown that's just a bunch of words and everything, I like to see what the character looks like. And a lot of times, once you know what somebody looks like, I mean, you could figure out, for me, easier what the voice should sound like. So it's more a looks thing, Is that voice befitting with the look of the character? That's about it.
Yeah, I like to just synthesize all the information that I have about that particular person and just think in terms of a human being. That's it, not just a character.
Thank you very much.
Cool. Next.
Hi, I was curious if you could voice act for any other character on Overwatch, who would you voice act for?
Winston. I refuse any, even if you gave me, like, you lined up all the Overwatch characters and said, you can choose anyone you want, Crispin, which one you want, it would be Winston every time.
I think you all got your dream characters, right?
I would want to be either Reinhardt or Doomfist.
I want to try Widowmaker. Who is sexy? That's who I want to be.
Roadhog, because he's bigger than me.
I would like to be strongest woman in the world.
Awesome.
Sorry.
Okay.
Next question.
Hi. So, as you guys said, that you usually are recording by yourselves. Is there anybody in the Overwatch cast that you would like to be in the studio with and having like kind of a banter?
Oh, I'd love to always be in the studio with everyone. What a party.
But typically the problem is a technical one, because when you get two actors that are really into voice acting together or more, right, you'll wind up stepping on each other's lines, and then the sound editors yell at you for not being able to edit your lines apart. So it's kind of a technical thing where they don't have us do it together.
I wish they could do an Overwatch movie, and because that's the best chance for us to be together in the studio.
I want to be with everybody.
I would love to record with Fred as Soldier 76, because I just love his work on the game so much. But if they put me in a room with Tracer at the same time, I think I'd just break down in tears and not be able to record, because I'd be like, I love you so much. You have to be a gorilla. I know, but I love her so much. So, yeah.
All right, thank you so much.
Cool. Okay.
Are there any upcoming cinematics we should look forward to? Like
Can you use the mic?
Sorry. Are there any upcoming cinematics we should look forward to? Like how they had cinematic trailers and there's maze and such like stuff like that.
I'm looking forward to any more cinematics they make. Please, more. I actually expected, when we first did the first Winston cinematic, I thought everyone was going to get a cinematic.
Yeah, me too.
And they're like, so there's a Tracer one, right? They're like, no, not really. I was like, why not? You know, so hopefully they will. Hopefully every character will get their own cinematic, because I want to see them.
Yeah. All right, we have time for one last question. You are it.
Oh, hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hi, Chris.
Hi, Megan.
Hi. I don't have any questions or anything. I really want to say to all the cast, even they're not here, especially Matt, that I want to say thank you, all the cast, for everything, all the great community and everything, great inspiration by all the characters. Thank you.
Thank you. That's
You're very welcome.
All right, so that's unfortunately all the time that we have for right now. So thank you all for coming out, and where can we?
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Oh, thank you.